Good morning, guys. Good morning, good morning, good morning. And I want to welcome you to Sing. Shonda inspires nations to grow, and you will often hear me reference my family as my singers or my VSPs, vibrational singing people. So, for those of you who always turn it on, mwah, you know that I love you. And for those of you who may be new to the channel, do me a favor, subscribe and click the bell so that you can stay connected with me. Well, listen, guys, I know today is Thursday and I'm giving you Wisdom Wednesday on Thursday, but I had to go to the dentist. I don't even want to talk about it, but I'm excited to talk to you guys today. I hope you were able to write down the 10 things that you deserve. And just, playing off of that, I was thinking today about, battles in our lives. And a lot of times, just depending on the level that we're trying to progress to, or what we're trying to accomplish, or where we may be in our lives, we may be experiencing a battle. And as I began to put on my clothes today, of course, I put on my two favorite colors. And if anyone knows me, that would be red and black. And so I decided to kind of explore a little bit deeper to see what the colors meant and why I was so attracted to them. And when I looked at red, it's associated with energy and it's associated with war. It could possibly be associated with danger, but strength, power, determination, as well as passion and desire and love. It can enhance a human's metabolism and increase your respiration rate, and it can raise your blood pressure. And some of us may be in situations to where we empower people. Some of us may be in dangerous situations. And some of us may be determined to see whatever we're going through the end to that manifestation. But in any event, it's a struggle that kind of, takes place. And when I looked at the psychology behind the color black, it's associated with power and elegance as well. But it's also associated with formality, death, evil, and even a mystery. And so as I thought about the two colors, they both symbolize power. But in the color black, it could be symbolized with evil, associated with that as well, and also associated with, death. And some of us may be in situations that are not from God. They may be dark situations. They may be evil situations. And some of us need to die out to our flesh in order for us to align with God in such a way to where all of our dreams become a reality and we begin to evolve into the person that God sees us as when He knit us together in the womb sac of our mothers. And so as I began to think about today, I was thinking about a lot of times when you're on a break of a breakthrough or accomplishing something mighty in your life or just existing in your life. You may experience obstacles, battles, trials, challenges, conflicts, disappointments, and situations that arise, and mainly to stretch you, to raise your level of awareness or consciousness, to evolve you internally, your spirit, to just give you that imagination that you had as a child. But oftentimes we succumb to that. We give in to those pressures, and we lose our strength and our power, and we get discouraged, and we get saddened, and we experience defeat. And we ponder on what happens over and over in our minds, how we could have done it different. And we don't realize that giants do fall. So whatever that giant is in your life, it will fall. And so when I thought about what I wanted to talk to you about, that's it. Giants do fall. So if we think about a giant, it's something imaginary or even possibly mystical. It's like a human being that's gigantic, like a supersized person. It could be something that's great in size or a force of just a size of great size and force and gigantic. It could be huge, enormous, massive, substantial. Something big in your life. And then when we think about falling, it's just moving downward. It could be typically rapidly and freely without control. So when I thought about giants do fall today, it led me over to the scripture, and I'll hit that just a moment. But I just want to just mention too that a lot of times we don't equip ourselves to battle properly in every obstacle, in every victory, and in everything that we may identify as a defeat, God gives us weapons to pick up along our path to use to fight that next giant, because we're forever growing and forever evolving. And a giant can symbolize anything that you're trying to either accomplish or something that may be giving you a problem in your life. And we need to learn to use what we have and pick up what we have to battle. And so as I began to think about this giant's fall, it led me over to the book of Samuel, 1 Samuel, when David was getting ready to fight the giant Philistine man, to face the Philistine. So if we go to 1 Samuel, it talks about how David remembered what he did. You know, he said to Saul, your servant kept his father's sheep. And when there came a lion or again a bear and took a lamb out of the flock, 35, I went out after it, and I smote it and delivered the lamb out of its mouth. And when it arose against me, I caught it by its beard, and I smote it, and I killed it. I smote it, and I killed it. And as I began to read this, Saul was so concerned about David because he was an adolescent. He was young. He was inexperienced. And he didn't want him to lose his life against this challenge that had been presented before them. But David didn't care about any of that because he knew what God had placed on the inside of him. See, a lot of times we forget what God has already done for us in battle. If we look back, there's already been some giants in our life that we have defeated, some that may have defeated us, but in every battle and every victory is a tool and is a weapon for you to use to move forward, so that when that same giant comes again, or a new giant appears in your life in whatever form that it may appear in, you can think about how good God has been and the goodness of Jesus, and it'll pull you through. So that's what he did. He began to ponder on how God allowed him to kill those beasts with his bare hands. And sometimes we have people in our group that may be around us that don't believe in us. Maybe it's because of fear of losing us. Maybe it's because of jealousy. Maybe it's because we're a woman, or because we're a man, or because we're younger, or because we're inexperienced, or because we're too experienced. Whatever the because is, it's those that are closest to us sometimes that believe in us the least. But David did not care because he knew what God had put inside of him. And singers, you need to know what God put uniquely inside of you. And so he was so upset because this man defied the armies of God. And David knew that he would have the victory because God had done it before. And so what I want you to do, singers, is I want you to remember where God has brought you from. I want you to not forget about the victories, even the defeats that you have had, that has taught you and equipped you to be better and stronger. Because what the devil meant to harm you with will always turn out for your good. Sometimes we often lie in defeat, and we lie in the coulda, shoulda, wouldas in our lives, and we can't move forward. We rest and we bask in despair, and we remain in our strife. And some of us are addicted to confusion, to drama, and to mess and controversy. The enemy is busy in our minds, creating all of this just by our thoughts. But giants do fall. And one thing I learned about this is that you have to work with what you have and not be concerned about anyone else and what they have. A lot of us try to be like everyone else. We need to be ourselves because God designed us uniquely for what he designed us to do. Stop comparing yourself to everyone else. Stop adapting to other people's ways and their uniqueness, because you'll never win that way. Stop leaning on other people's knowledge and lean on the knowledge of God, and get to know God and fall in love with yourself and evolve as a person and begin to reminisce on all the things that God has brought you through, and you will be able to identify giants throughout your life, because giants do fall. And I was reading towards the end how Saul was getting David ready to battle, and he put all these heavy clothes on him and all this bronze and all this metal and all this stuff. And as David began to engage or get prepared for the fight of his life, he had to work with what he was accustomed to. He had to work with his uniqueness. He had to work with what he knew. It didn't matter how this giant was just covered in all this armor. And so David put all that heavy stuff on and asked, I can't move in this. Take this off of me. And what was so great about this story is that he used what God had anointed him to use to defeat beasts and to defeat this giant. He used that 5 smooth stones, and he used that sling and his staff. And you know that giant fell. He defeated that giant. And what I want to come to you today, singers, is to remind you is that whatever obstacle that you may be facing, whatever new beginning you may be encountering, if you're in a transition, wherever you are in your life, because we're all in various areas in our lives, and they all represent a giant in some way and in some capacity. But I'm just here to remind you that giants do fall. They fall. I want to remind you to use what you have to move the mountains in your life. I want to remind you to use what you have for battle. Use what you have to make waves of victory en route to your manifestation. Use what you have to change the lives of those around you. Use what you have to make history. Use what you have to gain control of your situation. Use what you have to paint the beautiful picture that you want to display on your wall of righteousness. Use what you have in every mountain that you have, every obstacle and every challenge in your life. Why? Because giants do fall. And it's time for you to pick up what you are familiar with using. Pick up your version of your staff and your 5 smooth stones and your slingshot. And you need to pull it back and aim it at that giant in your life, because that giant will fall. And I came to serve notice today on the giants in your life. In the name of Jesus Christ, I came to speak to that giant of depression, to that giant of stress, to that giant of low self-esteem, to that giant of not good enough, to that giant of poverty, never knowing how you're going to meet your bills, that giant of not being happy, that giant of not having peace, that giant of despair, that giant that allows you to disrespect yourself and others to disrespect you, that giant of disbelief, that giant of not measuring up, that giant of not dreaming, that giant of residual thought patterns and generational curses that have been passed down to every man and every woman in your bloodline, and you find yourself in this hypnotic dance. That giant of being used and abused and mistreated, that giant of despair, that giant of gossip, that giant that goes against everything that God has for you. Because Christ came so that you can have your life to the fullest. And I'm here to speak to that giant today, because giants do fall. David defeated that giant. You know why? Because the battle wasn't his, it was God's all along. And the battle that you're facing, that new beginning that you're facing, that challenge, that race that you're in, you've already got the victory, because that battle is not yours. It belongs to the Lord. And some of us are in that last stretch. Some of us are right there at that finish line. Some of us are beginning our victory, our battles. But I want you to know to use what you have. Don't worry about your neighbor. Don't worry about what's going on around you. Use what God has equipped you to battle with. And every time you tap into that, you'll never lose. You know why? Because giants do fall. I love you guys. Have a great week. Bye now.